Welcome to today's video. We're tackling a confusing but crucial topic for international students and temporary workers in Canada who are applying for a U.S. visa. Specifically, we'll clarify why your expired Canadian Temporary Resident Visa, the TRV, usually doesn't matter for the U.S. visa decision, as long as your study permit or work permit is valid. We'll also cover the big caveat: travel logistics and re-entry to Canada. To keep this flowing, we'll move from key concepts to practical steps. Then test your knowledge with a short quiz and finish with strategic advice. Here's our roadmap. First, we'll state the big idea in plain terms. Next, we'll unpack the difference between Canadian legal status and the TRV that's used for travel. Then, we'll examine what U.S. consular officers actually evaluate in your application. After that, we'll highlight the critical travel caveat that can derail your plans. Moving forward, we'll walk through a step-by-step plan and a practical checklist. Then, we'll test your understanding with a quick quiz. Finally, we'll close with strategy, FAQs, and takeaways. Before we proceed, a quick disclaimer. This presentation is for general information only and is not legal advice. Immigration policies change, and decisions involve officer discretion. Your specific facts matter. For personalized guidance, consult an authorized immigration professional or attorney. Let's begin with the core takeaway. If you're applying for a U.S. visa from within Canada, the key factor is your valid Canadian status, meaning an unexpired study permit or work permit. Your expired Canadian TRV generally does not undermine your U.S. visa application. However, the TRV becomes critical once you try to leave Canada and return. We'll break that down in detail next. In this section, we clarify the difference between Canadian legal status and the TRV used for travel. Your Canadian legal status is established by your valid study permit or work permit. This is what makes you legally present in Canada. The TRV, by contrast, is essentially a travel document that allows you to board transportation to Canada and re-enter after travel. It does not define your current legal authorization to be in Canada. For U.S. visa purposes, consular officers primarily confirm that you are legally residing in the country where you apply, which in this case is Canada, and then they assess your non-immigrant intent and financial capability. The frequent misunderstanding is that an expired TRV means your status is invalid. That is incorrect. The TRV and your permit serve different roles. As long as your permit is valid, you remain legally in Canada even if the TRV has expired. This timeline shows the realistic order of operations. First, well before your intended travel, gather documents and verify that your study or work permit is valid. Next, complete the DS-160, pay the MRV fee, and schedule your visa appointment. On interview day, bring proof of Canadian status, evidence of ties and intent, and financial documentation. After the interview, wait for the decision and passport return if applicable. If your U.S. visa is approved, but your Canadian TRV is expired, you should apply for a new Canadian TRV before planning any international travel. Once your new TRV is issued, you can travel to the United States and return to Canada smoothly. If TRV processing is delayed, it is prudent to postpone travel to avoid complications with re-entry. Here is your practical sequence. First, verify that your study permit or work permit is still valid. This is essential. Second, collect proof of non-immigrant intent, such as ties to your home country, completion plans for your program, or job prospects outside the United States. Third, organize financial documentation, including bank statements, assistantships or payroll records, and tuition receipts. Fourth, complete the DS-160 and pay the MRV fee, keeping all confirmations. Fifth, schedule your U.S. visa interview in Canada, choosing a consulate with acceptable appointment times. Sixth, prepare a clear explanation of your trip purpose, duration, and funding, aligning it with your ongoing academic or employment commitments. Seventh, bring enrollment letters, transcripts, employer letters, and pay stubs to substantiate your story. Eighth, attend the interview and answer questions directly and consistently. Ninth, if your U.S. visa is approved but your Canadian TRV is expired, immediately apply for a new TRV. 10th, only finalize travel plans after the new TRV has been issued to avoid re-entry problems into Canada. U.S. consular officers evaluate several core elements. They confirm your valid Canadian status using your study or work permit. They assess your non-immigrant intent by looking at ties outside the United States, such as family responsibilities, property, or job opportunities. Financial stability is another critical factor, evidenced by bank statements and proof that your studies or employment are secure. Officers also consider continuity of your program or job, supported by enrollment letters, transcripts, pay stubs, or employer letters. Additionally, they look at your travel history and overall compliance with immigration rules. Finally, consistency matters. Your forms, documents, and interview responses should align. This side-by-side comparison highlights the distinct roles of the TRV and the study or work permit. The TRV is a travel document used primarily for airline boarding and re-entry to Canada. It may expire without affecting your legal presence if your permit remains valid. It is generally not a decisive factor for U.S. visa approval, but it becomes a risk for re-entering Canada after travel. The study or work permit, on the other hand, is your legal authorization to be in Canada. It must remain valid to maintain your legal status and eligibility to apply for a U.S. visa from within Canada. If it expires, your legal presence and application eligibility can be compromised. Therefore, maintaining an unexpired permit is critical, while the TRV must be renewed in advance of international travel. Use this table as a practical checklist. First, assemble evidence of your Canadian status, such as your study or work permit and proof of residence. Next, prepare identity and travel documents like your passport and compliant photos. Then, compile evidence of ties outside the United States, such as family letters, property deeds, or job prospects. Include financial documents to show you can fund the trip. Add academic or employment documents to prove continuity and credibility. A simple travel plan or conference invitation helps clarify purpose and duration. Finally, if your TRV is expired, include proof you have applied for renewal to demonstrate your plan for re-entry to Canada after travel. Quiz time. The question is, if your Canadian TRV is expired but your study or work permit is valid, how does that affect your U.S. visa application from within Canada? Option A. It disqualifies you from applying. Option B. It is generally irrelevant to the U.S. visa decision as long as your permit is valid. Option C. It guarantees refusal because you cannot travel right away. Option D. It only matters if you apply at the border, not at a consulate. You may pause the video now to think about the answer. We will discuss the answer in the next section. The correct answer is B. The expired TRV is generally irrelevant to the U.S. visa decision, provided your study or work permit is valid. Officers are focused on your legal presence in Canada, your non-immigrant intent, and your financial ability. The TRV becomes important later for returning to Canada after travel. Here is the major constraint. Even if your U.S. visa is approved, you cannot assume you can travel immediately if your Canadian TRV is expired. Airlines and Canadian border officers typically require a valid TRV for boarding and entry. Therefore, you should plan ahead and apply for a new TRV before any international travel. If the TRV processing timeline conflicts with your intended travel dates, it is safer to delay travel until the new TRV is issued. Let's shift to strategies. Renew your Canadian TRV early relative to planned travel. Prepare strong documentation and ensure your explanation is clear and consistent. Approach your application like a well-organized case file that answers anticipated questions before they arise. Let's walk through typical cases. First, a student with an expired TRV but a valid study permit can apply for a U.S. visa from within Canada. Travel should occur only after the new TRV is issued. Second, a worker on a post-graduation work permit with an expired TRV can also apply for the U.S. visa. They should renew the TRV before travel. Third, for a co-op student with a U.S. internship, secure the U.S. visa and ensure TRV renewal timing aligns with the internship start date. Fourth, for a conference trip, obtain the U.S. visa, then renew the TRV, and travel only after the TRV is issued, keeping invitation and funding letters ready. This mind map organizes your evidence into 6 categories: Canadian status, non-immigrant intent, financials, continuity, travel plan, and TRV planning. Under Canadian status, include your study or work permit and proof of residence. For non-immigrant intent, compile evidence of family ties, property, job prospects, and a clear return plan. Financials should show sufficient funds, payroll or assistantship income, and proof of tuition payments, if applicable. Continuity is demonstrated with enrollment letters, transcripts, employer letters, and pay stubs. The travel plan includes itineraries or conference invitations. Lastly, TRV planning should show that you have applied for renewal, understand processing times, and have a contingency plan if delays occur. Here's the second quiz. Your U.S. visa is approved, but your Canadian TRV is expired. What is the safest next step before traveling to the United States? Option A. Travel immediately because the U.S. visa is enough. Option B. Apply for a new Canadian TRV and wait for issuance before traveling. Option C. Travel by land since the TRV is only for flights. Option D. Ask the airline to let you board with just your study or work permit. You may pause the video now to think. We will discuss the answer in the next section. The correct answer is B. Even with a U.S. visa, you need a valid Canadian TRV to return to Canada. The safest course is to apply for a new TRV and wait until it is issued before you travel. Here are the key points. First, your valid Canadian status is the foundation, while the TRV concerns travel logistics. Second, U.S. officers evaluate your legal status in Canada, your non-immigrant intent, and your financial situation. Third, an expired TRV usually does not undermine your U.S. visa application, but can prevent your return to Canada after travel. Fourth, renew your TRV before traveling internationally. Fifth, keep documentation organized and ensure your narrative is consistent across forms, documents, and the interview. To conclude, remember that the TRV and your permit serve different purposes. Do not confuse legal status with travel permission. Focus your U.S. visa application on demonstrating valid Canadian status, non-immigrant intent, and adequate finances. If your TRV has expired, plan travel only after your new TRV is issued. Use the provided timeline, mind map, and checklist to prepare efficiently and avoid common pitfalls. Thank you for watching. If you found this helpful, please like the video, share it with a friend, and subscribe for more practical immigration guides. Post your questions and experiences in the comments. Your feedback helps us decide future topics.